Hello and welcome to Glitch Cube. We're a gaming podcast, and each week we take a deeper look into the art of video games. I'm Christian.
I'm Chris.
And before we jump into our topic, I want to just check out what's on your radar this week. We like to do it every single week because, why not? So what are you playing right now? What are you going through?
I'm mostly cleaning up that Immortals Phoenix Rising. I think I'm pretty close to the end now in it, and it's fun. It's definitely, I think I'm starting to get burnt out by it a little bit because it's a lot like Breath of the Wild. There's icon spam on the map. Like there's so many things you can do, and of course me wanting to do all of it. It's just overwhelming, but
Breath of the Wild, but flying, right?
pretty much, yeah. It's honestly like I will give it like a lot of merit, saying it has everything I loved about Breath of the Wild and discards the stuff I disliked about it. Okay. Like the item durability, there's none of that.
That's good. That was annoying.
Yeah. And some of like the challenges, like the temples or whatever, or in this game, the shrines of it are actually challenging. I mean, the shrines in Breath of the Wild were challenging too, but I'm also thinking of the dungeons, right? So when you're fighting the divine beast, those dungeons never really felt complex or long enough. Like they felt very short and to the point.
Right.
These, like, sometimes they get so technical, it's kind of crazy.
Well, none of them were ever like the water temple, right? In Ocarina of Time or anything like that, or what we're used to.
Yeah. For a Legend of Zelda game, I felt like it took a step back in the difficulty of that and put all the difficulty in the shrines, which is cool. I mean, I can see why they want to do it, to make it where more people, it's more accessible, but I don't know. And I feel like that's why I'm enjoying this game so much, because it really does feel like Breath of the Wild Part 2 in a lot of ways. And so I'm finishing up on that, and then I'm trying to think of kind of a new challenge for my backlog this year. I mean, last year I was fun doing the 40.
Yeah.
I feel like I could do another 40 this year, but I think I'm going to challenge myself to look at, I don't want to say games that have gotten high ratings over the years, but I definitely have like a list of games that I want to beat this year that I've wanted to for so long.
Right.
Kind of classics, what people view as like amazing games from the past, like, I don't know, 15 years or so. And maybe even before that too. I haven't figured out something clear cut, but I have a lot of big name games this year I want to play through, because I'm starting to see everyone post about on Instagram and stuff like, oh, this game meant a lot to me. And I'm like, damn, I still haven't played that game.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, okay, I need to jump on it because so many other people have. And here I am playing some game that not many people have touched. And I'm like, well, I can't really talk about it, So other than that, like, that's really it. I'm watching, pretty much binged all of like Cobra Kai. I'm on the last season now.
It's such a good show.
It's really good. And this season, like, it's starting off kind of strong. So I'm kind of excited for it.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good one.
Yeah.
I love the fact that they got all the new actors, or all the original actors, back into it. And it just,
it's crazy, dude. Like it's like they never left, like they do the acting so well for it. It's crazy.
It's great.
I thought the show was going to be really cheesy and cheap when I first heard about it. And I'm really surprised how good it really is. Like, it doesn't feel like a Karate Kid show, it feels just like you're like a kind of a typical funny throwback to like the 80s, 90s vibe. Like, I really, really like it. But what about you? What have you been doing?
So actually, one of the games I picked up recently and I've been playing it because they did a mobile release of it, was SteamWorld Quest.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
I never had a chance to play it before, but it's actually really, really fun. I like the mechanics a lot. It's hard. It's a lot harder than I expected.
That's the card one, right?
Yeah. But I think what makes it difficult is the fact that like that all the enemies have so much HP. It's insane. So like
Mm.
even your basic guy, you're going up against someone that has like 700 health, and then all your attacks just do like 20. so
Oh,
so you're sitting there for a while on all these guys. But luckily the stages aren't that big, and the artwork's really nice. The gameplay is really smooth and fluid, and the iOS release has a really strong port to it. So it just feels
nice.
good playing this game. So I'm excited to kind of continue on with that one. And you kind of touched on what I wanted to bring up too, is after your 40/40 challenge for last year, I started thinking about like, oh, maybe I should do something as well. Like, and there's so many JRPGs that I have not played, like classic ones that I really want to. That
Mm-hmm.
I might have like looked up or watched a lot of videos on them, but I've never actually had the chance of experiencing it myself. So I think that's what this year is going to be. 2021 is going to be my year of the JRPG, and
Hell yeah.
I'm just going to go through. I picked up Grandia 1 and 2 for the Switch, and I'm going to
Nice.
go through those guys, and I think those are going to be my first ones, and just kind of run down the line of it all and just kind of see what happens. And then, I mean, on top of that, if you're following me on Instagram, you'll see that I've started my own little like drawing challenge this month, where it's very D&D inspired. I took a bunch of monsters from them, so I'm just trying to, you know, better myself as far as like my art goes, and really challenge myself to go through one of these guys and finish it to completion. And I figured instead of going and, writing on the coattails of someone else's, I'll just make my own because it just sounds fun. And I love D&D, so yeah, that's what I've been kind of playing with. So
Hell yeah, that's awesome. I feel you on the JRPG thing for this year. Like I think I'm gonna heavy focus on that
yeah.
because just like you, I recently got the Grandia collection too, and I'm
Nice.
like super excited because I've always wanted to play the second game. So
Hmm.
I'm looking forward to that, and I feel like this year I keep seeing posts about Dragon Quest 8,
Yeah.
and I need to play that because I basically played all the other titles. So
Yeah. It's
oh
time.
man, it's gonna be a lot of long games.
Yeah. 2021, the year of the JRPG. Let's do this.
Hell yeah,
That'll be fun. I like it already. Has a nice ring to it.
it does. I like it.
Cool.
For today's topic, we're gonna go over a little dangerous game,
Ooh, I like danger. Don't forget your
the
sword.
hype game. Oh yeah, you're gonna need that. Hype. Good, bad. I mean, you decide. But for us, there's a pretty good like sides to both, right?
Hmm.
So I mean, we all know about the negative hype, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But good hype exists, and it brings a lot of joy, and especially in the gaming world, like that hype is special. It kind of sparks that sometimes nostalgic feel that we once had, or the excitement of going on a new adventure, and it's just a great feeling. And I mean, what are your thoughts on like positive hype?
Well, I think hype is important, right? I mean, you need to get people excited. You need to get the crowd going, the audience, right? Like, look at Flavor Flav, right? The most famous hype man in the world. Like, you have hype everywhere in every single facet of life, right? And it just makes sense that hype is so strong in gaming as well. And it's what brings communities together, I think, right? Like it
Mm-hmm.
starts a conversation with other people where you realize you guys have the same interests in mind. So it just makes it easier to start talking about those things, and you might find out some other stuff about these people too. So like when you share hype, when you share excitement for something, it just brings you together. So I think if it's done right, that's the key part here, and we're going to go into that a little bit more. If hype is done correctly, then
Mm-hmm.
it's good. it's strong, and it can really benefit not just the community with getting a really upstanding product, but also the makers and all that, to inspire them to continue on the path that they're going, and just gives them that reassurance that they're doing something right here and they're on the right path. So that's kind of my view on hype.
No, that's actually kind of how I look at it too. You know, I think for me, I look at a lot like the older, like early 2000s, like when the PlayStation 2 was coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember the hype behind it, you know, and it's just that excitement of a new console launch always has such a special hype to it that it kind of feels unreal, you know, because you're seeing new technology. There's something new that's going to challenge what we know, right? And I mean, we see that just now with the PlayStation 5 and the Series X. Like it's crazy, you know. It's cool to see that hype is still there.
Yeah, and it's that hope for something better, something new, something different, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and the unlimited possibilities, because you have this memory of the previous console, of like these games that you've played throughout the years now that have really like inspired you and you've gotten excited about. And then now when they say, oh, well, guess what? There's a bigger and better version coming out. It's like, oh my gosh, there's more. Like they can do even more. They can take what I've already loved and expand on it even more. So like console hype is a very specific, interesting one that it generates a lot of, I mean, we have console wars. Like that's a term. So there's a lot of interesting, like the fact that that's there, that's crazy, right? It just sparks something inside of us where it's like it's almost like rooting for your favorite team, right? In like a sports event, it's like, oh, I'm Team Xbox, I'm Team PlayStation, right? So it's fun. I think it's a fun hype, and it's one of the hypes that doesn't really, no one really gets hurt by it or burned by it. In a sense, like some consoles might not live up to exactly what you think initially, but everyone understands it's early in that console's lifetime. So it's kind of like an accepted thing where it's not holy crap amazing when it first comes out, but the potential is what keeps it alive and keeps it exciting.
Speaking of hype and consoles, you know what I'm hyped for?
What's that?
The KFC console.
Oh my gosh, I saw that where it comes with the chicken bucket warmer.
Can cook the chicken for
Yes,
I need it.
That's so dumb.
I was reading about it, and the specs on it are
they're
actually
good.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically just a PC, but it seems like it runs stuff better. Like it has better tech than like PS5 and stuff. I'm like, dude,
I just don't understand that. That's so funny.
I want a chicken warmer,
right? Like, how hot can it possibly get without burning your system, though?
That's what I'm wondering. Unless that's the heat exhaust.
No, is it all going to that?
That'd be something.
I mean, that's actually really clever if that is the case.
Maybe I can turn my PC into a chicken warmer.
Can it be a coffee warmer? That'd be great.
Ooh, I actually like that.
Right.
Maybe built in a coffee maker in my PC and never have to leave the table.
Oh, there you go. Your PC heats up the water on its own.
Yes.
Yeah. All you have to do is play Crysis.
Water that's cooling it.
Yeah, you just play Crysis and then you burn your computer. Yeah. All right. So what games, I mean, like we said, we mentioned that hype can be potentially good, right? So for games specifically, which ones have stood out to you that actually stood through the test of time of the hype?
I'm going to go back a little bit. I think Final Fantasy VII. I remember, even though I was a little young for the release, because I mean, I was about...
It's 97, right?
Yeah, I was about 8.
Yeah, same.
But I just remember magazines and all that kind of stuff. People were like playing it up, right? They were saying like, this is going to be the RPG that changes everything. And they were selling it on that motion, you know? Because I mean, up until then, the RPGs we had were mostly sprite based, or they weren't really 3D. Yeah. And I mean, if there was any, like, they didn't look as good,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, the pre-rendered backgrounds, everything with 7 was just so beautiful. And then it came out, and I mean, to me, from what I remember, it really lived up to the hype. You know, you still have people to this day saying it's one of the best RPGs in existence.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the earliest ones that I can think of.
Well, that one had a lot
that
of
lives up to the hype.
interesting buzz around it as well, because that was the first Final Fantasy series to not be on a Nintendo system as well.
That too.
Yeah,
Yep.
because it was originally planned to be on the N64, I believe. And then they didn't have enough memory space in the cartridges, so they needed to figure out something else. So Sony, with the disc system, they were able to put more game on there. I mean, it still was 4 discs, which is crazy to remember that we had to actually switch discs back then. But
oh god, yeah.
But the Sony was strong enough, or the PlayStation was strong enough to actually hold this game. So now that when people think about Final Fantasy, they think Sony, PlayStation, all that. But 7 was actually the first title to switch over. And that was pretty controversial at that time, too.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, can you imagine them losing that title? Like,
just they lost Squaresoft in general back then. Like,
yeah.
I guess from what I remember, they got burned by Nintendo, and that's why they went to Sony for the longest time. And then they kind of developed for like the Wonder Swan and stuff like that. But
and then like Crystal Chronicles came out and stuff like that, right? That was like Nintendo.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's when they went back to Nintendo.
Yeah. So continuing on this little hype train that we're going for, right? The ones that lived up to the positives. Any list would not be complete if we didn't include Skyrim in positive hype land. When that trailer first came out, people went nuts for it. And it was one of the first like character creators where the models actually looked good. And you felt like you had a real open world experience unfolding in front of you. And people still play this game. How many ports, how many different remasters, it's on everything. And
it's still getting ported.
Yeah, it's crazy. And that game definitely, I would say, has lived up to the hype so much that... So this is a crazy little story. Have you heard the contest that Bethesda had? Where apparently if you named your child Dovahkiin, you would get free Bethesda content for life.
Oh my god.
And
what?
Someone did it. Someone actually named their child Dovahkiin, that was born on the day of the release of the game, and now they have, but they're supposed to have Bethesda content.
Release.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. But hey, free games for life from Bethesda. If that's what you want, you can have all their Fallout 76 bad stuff. But
oh, yeah, exactly. I'm like, after Skyrim, they kind of went downhill a little bit. So I'm like, okay, like
a little bit. But they get every version of Skyrim forever. So there you go. That's something.
Right? Getting all those collector's editions for free? Hell yeah.
What's going to be great is when that kid hates video games.
Oh, God. Everyone calls him Dova.
Right? Oh, I can't believe they did that. It's
Bendo.
insane. Bendova. But that just shows how strong hype can potentially be. Like, that's how excited people got for this. It's insane. And I mean, usually you see that more with like movies and books. Like, look at for instance, the Twilight series. How many people named their child Edward and right, like after that fact. But
yeah,
I feel like you don't really hear about that for games as much. So it's just crazy when I heard that story. I was like, there's no way. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, I remember when Skyrim came out and I was like, thinking like, oh man, the customization of this is crazy. Like, I mean, thinking about the game that came out before it, Oblivion, I remember I was never too huge of a fan of it. And when I saw Skyrim, I saw, ooh, this actually looks fun. Like, more to explore and stuff. And I remember like everyone freaking out about this game. And when we all finally played it, I felt like, wow, like this, it's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, nothing's ever been this big and so beautiful. And I mean, some of the mods for it are crazy where you have all of Morrowind in it, you know, or they've like totally put Oblivion in it. Like, it's crazy what they've done with this game. And it's it keeps going.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
It's funny. They're really gonna ride that train out as long as they possibly can, and I mean,
Oh
good
yeah.
for them. I would too, because like you mentioned, the rest of their titles after Skyrim were like kind of meh. Like there was nothing. I can't think of anything after that that was.
Just Doom and Doom Eternal probably were the only.
Those are good, but I mean, it's a remake. It's a report, right? Or it's not like a new franchise or something big, right?
It's just like a reboot.
Yeah. Because I mean, Doom's
I feel
always
like
been big, so
yeah, it's big, but it's not like explosive big. You know, like I'm just thinking about like Bethesda titles after Skyrim. It's like Fallout 4.
I returned.
We'll get into the negative hype
yeah.
about that later. But
I returned that game.
I feel like Bethesda has kind of like rode like a roller coaster, you know, like they'll have some good ones and then they'll drop down for a bit, and then yeah, I feel like they were a company that used to be hyped up, but then they just kind of diminished. But I know there's like loyal fans out there to them as well.
Right. Yeah. All right. So I have a personal attachment to this game, which I feel like a lot of people do as well. So for this next one, I mean, you can pick any game in this series. I'm just going to go series now at this point, because every time this thing gets announced, talked about, all of that, people go crazy for it because there's such a wide audience, and that's Super Smash Brothers.
Oh yeah.
Any title doesn't matter, it's going to get that hype. And I mean, in my opinion, I feel like it always lives up to it, but you can't really go wrong with that formula. You pick all your favorite characters from Nintendo and you get to just put them against each other and just beat the crap out of one of them. That's great. And
oh yeah,
the fact that now with the new Smash, they keep announcing new characters, and I mean, Sephiroth's now in there, right? Like, yeah. And people, like, of course, people are gonna go crazy for that because that's fun. That's insane to see that. And no matter what, this game's always gonna be on the forefront of like the hype train. They've really built it up right. They even went well with the marketing of it, with the announcer voice and the like that whole silhouette of like the who's that Pokemon, and you hear people like guessing who's in what, like who's in this next game. Like I remember when Ultimate got announced and they had the silhouette of all the characters in the background, and then you had like the characters that people already knew were in the game like already lit up. And so many fan theory videos came out of like, oh, well, this silhouette looks like it has a scarf from this one, and it's this guy, right? Like they were really trying to play that like who's that Pokemon game and figure out who they're going to be able to challenge and play with at this point. So they are very, very smart with their way that they market it, and I just that's a series that's never going to die because I mean it's also Nintendo, so they're never going to let that one go away. They repeat the same titles over and over again, but they do it right.
Yeah, especially with Ultimate, because I feel like I read somewhere that Ultimate was supposedly the last Smash game, so they're just going to add a lot to it.
Yeah, that's what they said, but that this is it. There's no more.
The problem is Nintendo's going to come up with a new console soon.
Yeah.
In the next few years. So, I mean, are they going to have a new Smash, or they're going to be like are we able to transfer it to the new one? Because, I mean, they still have 2 more fighters, I think, that they haven't announced yet for their second fighter pass, you know? And it's crazy, dude. That roster in Ultimate, it's insane. Like, I haven't unlocked everything yet. Like, I still have probably 10, 15 more people to unlock, you know? And I'm still working my way, like, having fun with the new fighters they added in.
Yeah, it's massive. I haven't played it in a long time. I definitely want to get back into it.
I booted up randomly because, I mean, I don't have the new fighter pass. I had the last one. So I was like, oh, I'll try out, like, Terry, and I'll try out all these other ones. I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. You know, it's kind of ridiculous how many Fire Emblem characters, but I like the Dragon Quest hero in there. Like, that one's really cool.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Really fun to play as.
And Steve's in there now? Come on.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I know. That one's ridiculous.
Minecraft is everywhere. Yeah. We should play Smash. That'd be fun.
Yeah, I'm down.
It's been a long time. Oh boy. Oh boy.
Yeah, I've been kind of itching to jump back into it just for a little bit,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. We need a good fighter game.
But I'm thinking about like all the past Smash games releases. Like they've always had a hype. I remember Brawl. I
Oh,
remember when
Brawl was
that was
huge.
announced.
Oh,
People were freaking out because I remember when Snake was announced and people were like, "Oh my god!
I
Like,
lost it. I was like,
why
yep.
is he in this?" And I feel like that one is the one I remember the most, aside from Ultimate.
I think that one was really cool because it actually showed the history of Nintendo that a lot of gamers probably don't know. Was that,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Metal Gear Solid also was one of those titles that started on the Nintendo. Metal Gear 1, the original Metal Gear,
Yep.
was on Nintendo. So it makes sense that Snake would be brought back into this. And that's why you see the Final Fantasy characters from 7, because they were originally supposed to be Nintendo. So they're coming in here. Dragon Quest, it's same thing. Started out on
Yep.
Nintendo and now is on, I mean, everything now because it's ported, but it went to PlayStation. And now it's on DS and everything as well. But that was one of those where the original starts, like where these guys came from, was Nintendo based. So showing gamers, like these new gamers, these kids coming up that don't go into the history or don't know much about it, like showing them that no, we like these are their humble beginnings, these are their roots. Their roots are in Nintendo, so of course you can play them here.
Except for Sonic
Yeah, that one doesn't make sense, huh?
and Pac-Man.
With
I mean,
Namco.
Pac-Man. I mean, you could argue Pac-Man was Atari, but I guess Pac-Man's just kind of everywhere now. I keep forgetting he's in that.
I keep forgetting Sonic and them are in there. Interesting.
Yeah,
There has to be something.
there's a lot
to
of
it.
interesting choices.
We're gonna see Crash Bandicoot show up now.
You know, I literally thought he was going to be the next one announced.
That'd be fun. I'd play him. Why not? At this point,
I feel like, are the Crash games? Yeah, they're on the Switch now too. I was like, I know they've been on the Xbox too, but I don't remember if they were on the Switch.
yeah. Speaking of hype and Smash, I mean, might as well as a little thought experiment. What character in a game that hasn't been in the roster yet would just blow your mind? Which one would be the one where you're like, oh my god, I have to play this guy?
I mean, everyone is freaking out, still thinking that Master Chief might be in there, or Goku, which I don't understand why Goku would be in there, but for me, ooh, that's a really hard pick, because I feel like a lot of the choices I like are already in it. Damn, there's a lot of good choices. I would like to see, like, it's kind of really random, but there was this game on the NES called Star Tropics. It'd be cool to see if that was somehow brought into Smash.
Oh, yeah.
Because the character's really cool, because he has, like, a whip and all that. I feel like he'd be kind of similar to Ness, but yeah, I'm trying to think of, like, what would be cool in there. Like,
It's a tough question.
I feel like their last reveal is going to be, like, really big.
Yeah.
You know? What about you?
That one is a tough one for sure. And, you know, like you mentioned, the roster is huge and it's just going to continue going on. But I think, I mean, I'm going to butcher the name, but Ametsuaru from Okami would be awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that would be really cool. Or since they're doing Final Fantasy characters and Red 13 is one of my favorites, I would love to play as Red 13. I can just imagine his, like, final smash where he howling at the moon or something and he just, like, drops, like, meteors on everybody. Like, it's built in already. It's ready to go.
Oh, you know, now I know which one I would think. And I know it's not going to happen because, you know, Rare is all with Microsoft now, but Conquer.
Oh, my gosh.
I would love that. He just slings poop at people from far away.
Just a bad mouthing squirrel going in.
Yes. Every time he hits someone, he's like, fuck you. Yeah. Like, oh, man.
You know, they should bring the worms from Worms to BMD. That'd be pretty funny.
There's so much they could do with it. Like they were saying, they could really add everything if they wanted to, you know, and as Nintendo continues to partner with all these, like, different companies, it'll be easy for them to really add more stuff.
All right. So hype. We've been talking about a lot of good, positive hype right now. Now, unfortunately, hype doesn't always go in the way that the content creators planned it, right?
Oh
There's
yeah.
there's some there's some games out there that have been hyped up like crazy and they just fell flat on their face. And I'm sure a lot of people listening can think of one that just came out about a month ago, right? So,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
it's big on everyone's title. Cyberpunk 2077. That's one of the big ones. But we're gonna let's what's a hype game that you remember? Maybe not most recent, but just one that you remember that just kind of fell flat.
I think for me, one that I was most let down by was probably Mass Effect Andromeda.
Ugh.
It okay. I didn't hate Mass Effect 3.
Mhm.
I get that it was flawed, and I did see like the different ending to see like how they fixed it.
Mhm.
But Andromeda, I just could not get into. And I can't say that, oh, my feelings for Mass Effect are nostalgia, because there was a point where I would replay the Mass Effect series like every year, every other year,
Right. Well, those are solid
leading up to
games.
Andromeda.
So,
And the changes, like the combat system, how they changed in Andromeda was fine. I didn't mind that. I actually kind of liked it because it was so different. You could really go crazy with different builds.
mhm.
It's just the story didn't pull me in, and the graphical issues, and it's sad because they could do a lot with that IP, right? They could do like what they're doing with Star Wars, like literally create a whole universe and make it interesting.
Well, it's a space
But
opera. They can just do anything at that point. It's No Man's
exactly,
Sky. Like,
and it's a bummer because the planets seem kind of interesting. Like I'm probably halfway through the game, and then I stopped, and it's just it's one of those games where I'm like, well, I have to like force myself to play like for an hour or two just to like progress, and I just
yeah.
couldn't get into it. And I remember hearing about the game, and I was so excited for it. You know,
Yeah, like many. That's the thing. Like it was a new
yeah,
Mass Effect game. That franchise is so loved, and people go nuts for it. And the idea of like the morale system and just how vast the story is, it felt like it broke boundaries in the past. And then
mm-hmm.
Andromeda just, while people were excited for it because of their memories of the previous titles, it just could not hold true to what people had expected. And I think that that's one of the things that we're going to touch on here with a lot of these games that fail the hype. It's player expectation is just too big. So I think that's
Yeah,
one of those that really fell to that.
especially to the point they could kill a franchise. You know, like Mass Effect. Yeah, they're looks like they're making a new one, but can we really trust it? You know, there's been so many changes at BioWare and all that where it's not really original people
Yeah.
that much. And, you know, I look back on some of these other games that were so hyped up that were, you know, the third game in a series, or, you know, different franchises that maybe got off a rough start. You know, you look at Watch Dogs. I remember everyone was kind of excited by it because it seemed interesting. And I feel like it's kind of a 50-50. Like there's people out there that really love the original,
Mm-hmm.
but it was something that didn't really live up to the hype for many, but then it was redeemed with the sequel,
Right.
you know, and yeah, there's so many games with failed hype. You know, look at Anthem. I
Oh
remember
gosh.
seeing I think E3 footage like a year or two before it came out, and I was like, this looks amazing. You can fly everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
and it looks so cool. You know, luckily I didn't fall into the pre-order BS that I gave up on a long time ago.
Yeah.
But as soon as I saw people like stream it, I'm like, this game does not look fun. And I mean, now you can find it for $5 almost anywhere.
And
And
that's just a bad sign. That's a dead title.
yeah, seeing that and seeing how Andromeda was, I for Dragon Age, the new one, I don't know what to think of it, because personally, Inquisition, I kind of enjoyed it, but I don't know. I feel like,
Well, that was another one of those like franchise killers. Like that just
yeah. Well, the sequel really killed it. And Inquisition kind of made it better,
it
but
was too little, too late. So
that's how I look at it, you know?
yeah.
What about you? What are some of your picks?
Well, to kind of kick it back a little bit, for me, one of the ones that kind of did not live up to the hype, unfortunately, was Diablo 3. Now, the
Mm.
original Diablo
Ooh.
games, I love those. Like, I remember those were games that me and my friends would play together constantly. And we even got to the point where we were like modding Diablo 2 to make equipment. And one of my buddies was even selling like equipment online and just making a bunch of money doing it, which I thought was kind of crazy to think about, right? Because you can just put any kind of stats you want and people could just download the software. So why are they spending $50 for him to do it? But yeah, it was just one of those games that just, it was really fun. I love the Quest series. I mean, I'm a D&D fan through and through, so it's close to that feeling. Like you get the idea of like going on a dungeon raid with your party, with your buddies, and actually like fighting the big bad and accomplishing something huge. And then, of course, the loot game for that is massive. But the RNG for the loot is annoying. But, you know, it's one of those things that you just
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
accept over time. And to say Diablo 3 is a bad game would be not right. It's a good game. It's solid. But the creators had did something where they kind of hyped up the idea of it and made it bigger than what it actually was. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Everyone does that. They oversell their products, of course, because they want more people to buy it. But the
Mm-hmm.
backlash that came from that was massive. And there's one aspect specifically that they've really, really jumped on a lot for the Diablo 3 series, and that was the auction house. And for those of you who might not be familiar, it's literally you can auction off items in game, but instead of actually using in game currency, it used real currency. So you can just buy this with real money and you're bidding, like you just create bidding wars through Diablo 3. And in theory, it sounded interesting because the game designers were even saying that this might be a new form or like a new career for people to be auctioneers in the Diablo universe, which I mean,
Yeah.
that could be fun. That could be cool. But like really looking at thinking about that, there's no way that's not a possible thing, right? And it never worked out. It didn't pan out. The auction house ended up becoming just a bunch of microtransactions that everybody hates those. And I think that's like an instant game killer whenever you have something
Mm-hmm.
big like a AAA title that people spent $60 on and then you throw microtransactions at them after that. It's, I mean, for me personally, I try and avoid those like the plague because that's just ridiculous. I already bought the game. Why am I buying more? So they did end up later coming back and fixing a lot of the little issues with their DLC Reaper of Souls. And they fixed the microtransaction problems too and all that. But at that point, they had already lost a huge audience of potential players.
Mm.
And I think Diablo 3 was the first one to get ported to a system as well, right? Like it was released on a system as well as PC, whereas before the Diablo games were just PCs, right?
No, Diablo has been
Was
on
it on consoles always?
consoles
Okay.
since the beginning. It
Yeah.
was originally on the
Or
PlayStation.
was it supposed to be a release title for one of them? I can't remember. There's like a big thing about it being coming out like with the new system, get this new game, it's new world, like all this. Like it just was a lot. And it just kind of fell a little flat. And that was entirely at the fault of the creators of the marketing team overplaying this game completely. So yeah, it's a little unfortunate, but I mean, Diablo's still a fun game, so you should play it.
See, I didn't even really know about that auction thing. Like, I remember getting Diablo 3 and, like, I probably dropped 100 or 2 hours into it with, like, a friend or two. And then we just had, like, a lot of fun with it. And I didn't even think about, like, any of that.
Yeah,
You know, it's crazy. Like, I didn't know that was going on.
yeah. I mean,
But, I mean, I also
it's
didn't.
not necessary. So
Yeah. I just kind of looked past that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
still, it felt, like, different compared to Diablo 1. Like, I still haven't played Diablo 2 to this day, but I've played the first one.
Mhm.
And I don't know, there's something about the old, more classic style of it was kind of cool.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun game. If you like D&D and RPGs, that's a really good one. Check it out. All right. So I think, honestly, this one, it's so disappointing because it's one of those that I still haven't played.
Pokemon Sword and Shield?
No, I played that one. That one was still disappointing though, but I'll get into that in a sec. But for me, No Man's Sky,
it's good now.
It's good. It's good now, right? But that's the thing. You have to say that it's good now. It's another one of those that the developers promise too much. And I love the concept of procedural generation as a designer. It's one of those things that's always fascinated me because you can really create like custom tailored content to the individual. So every game is going to be different, and that's just exciting, right? It never becomes flat. Like it's not supposed to be repetitive. That's the point of procedural generation. And unfortunately, the game just didn't really hold up. The procedural generation wasn't as good as they had claimed. And one of the things that I think is just a cardinal sin on the designers and what they did was all of the so-called gameplay footage that they released for their trailers was actually fake. None of it was actually in-game footage. And how can you do that to your audience, right? Like, you're playing up this crazy new idea and then you put out this fake footage, and then when you release the game, it's nothing like what you've been showing this whole time. How would you expect anyone to react to that, right? So, of course, that game definitely got thrown to the back burner. Nobody wanted to play it anymore. It was lost. And like you said, now, like, it's one of those games that now, after they fix things and they put in the time and effort to actually deliver what they promised, it's a good game now. But too little too late. They've already lost their audience. So
yeah, I remember the day it came out. Like, I remember leading up to it, I was like, man, this game looks amazing. Like, I'm super excited for it, right?
Same.
And this was at a point where I stopped pre-ordering games because, I learned hype can be, blinding sometimes. But I thought the game looked cool. So I remember walking over to GameStop. They were out of copies. And I'm like, damn it. Like, how is this game out? Like, it's new. Right. So I went home and just ended up buying it digitally. And I played it for maybe about 20 hours or so. And then I realized, like, there's nothing really, there's no progression, like there was like a mild little storyline going through it, but that was it. And I'm like, okay, I make it to the end, but what's the point? What's the point of all these planets and space when there's just nothing to fill it?
Right.
And I put it down for the longest time, even after the first, like, maybe 2 major updates where they started doing base building. I didn't touch it because I was like, screw that game.
Yeah.
Right.
You're jaded by it. So.
Yeah. And I get why, a lot of people are angry about it. Like, I wasn't angry at it. I'm like, okay, well, whatever. I got burned like a lot of other early access games on Steam. But once they started doing all these updates, I was like, this is kind of cool. I mean, it wasn't what they promised in the beginning, but it was awesome seeing them try to make amends about it, and I played it maybe, I haven't played this latest update where they added cities and like huge robots like mechs, but I played the one before it and it was, I kind of enjoyed it. Like, it's cool what they've done. Like, they've added life to it and they made it seem more interesting. They added empty spaceships, so it feels kind of like Dead Space. And base building's fun. Does it make me want to play it more? No, I feel like when I feel like I want to play a survival game in space, I'll play it. To me, when I look at a game kind of similar to it, like Elite Dangerous, mostly that's like a space fighting game, right? but they just released a new major DLC that lets you actually land on planets and
Oh, that's
explore.
Cool. Yeah.
And looking at it, it seems like a more high def No Man's Sky with more action.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's basically No Man's Sky with more action, less crafting.
That's cool.
Of course, even though I love crafting, I feel like I'd be more drawn to the action because if I want to craft, I want to craft a lot. I'll go to Minecraft if I want to do that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's cool seeing No Man's Sky redeem themselves and people are all happy with it now. And it's cool to see what it's become.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like my time with it is kind of done. I'll explore every patch and then I'll jump back into it later. But yeah, that one was, I think, the first big burn for a lot of people when it came to hype.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, I'm looking at Cyberpunk now and I'm thinking it's going to be the same thing with that.
It's the same exact formula. It's the same stuff over again.
It's all these things promised, advanced AI and all of that, and just fell through. I'm thinking this year they're going to fix it, and then the next year it'll be where they add in all those promises. But for a good majority, it's too late.
Yeah, they've gone too far, and I don't think that one's it's gonna be just like No Man's Sky, where, I mean, if you're interested in No Man's Sky, I would say pick it up, or if you have the Xbox, what was it, the Xbox Gold or whatever it's called?
No, the Game Pass.
Yeah, the Game Pass. They have it for free if you have an Xbox Game Pass, so it doesn't hurt to check it out. But that's how far that game's fallen, where now it's a free included game. It's not like a high title anymore that it should be.
Right.
Yeah. So the same thing's going to happen with Cyberpunk. It's going to end up being one of those games that's just like, oh, free add-on if you have this service. And while it should be one of those games that probably stays premium price forever because it should be that good.
Well, the problem with Cyberpunk is it's not just the title of the game that was like kind of tarnished or overhyped. It was also the company.
Mm-hmm.
People looked at CD Projekt Red with a crazy amount of hype and love, and to do this, like it really burned their image too.
Mm-hmm.
And as someone who's beaten Cyberpunk, I think deep down the bones of it are good. Like I was able to look past the instability and a lot of the things that, like the empty promises,
mm-hmm.
right? And deep down it is a good game. Like I can see the amount of work that went into it, but it definitely was released too early for what they were trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Will I play it if they ever fully fix it and go back, like do everything they had promised? Maybe. I feel like my views on Cyberpunk are so like critical on a lot of things that are not from technical problems. It's more so like story things. Mm-hmm. It would just be cool to see them fix it, because CD Projekt Red, they're a good company, from what it seems like, right? And it'd be kind of a bummer if this like really ruined like their image.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it doesn't, but it just kind of depends on how quickly they fix these problems. If it takes 2 years to fix the initial problems of the game, then they might be dead in the water. So,
I mean, look at hype too. Like this is kind of a little divergence, but Halo.
Oh yeah.
Everyone was so excited for Infinite, and then we see that little trailer, and it's like open world Halo, but it looked like crap. Yeah. And I'm just like, oh, here we go. Like, obviously they're trying hard to fix it, and I'm kind of excited to see what comes of it, but I feel like a lot of these like AAA companies are really selling like this overhype. You look at Cyberpunk again, you saw their ads everywhere.
Yeah.
Everyone was talking about it. It's like companies are trying to push that over excitement, and it's kind of a bummer. Like when I see a game have all this advertisement, I'm less interested now just because I don't know. I feel like it's not going to be worth the excitement.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think that's something that we kind of are learning as gamers now, and just absorbers of content, right? It's something that I've been calling. Maybe people use this term, but I just thought it's like the hype sickness, right? Where
Ooh,
you
get down with the
get
sick.
down with the hype sickness. But we've become so jaded by these titles, and we like now that maybe it's because we're older and we're not getting excited about these things anymore because we've seen empty promises like that before in the past, where
Yeah.
a game can promise anything. It can promise like the world, but you have to also understand the limitations of machines in general. So there's only so much that these games can actually do before it's just like it's right. Like there's only so much they can actually put out content wise. And that's just one of those things that us now going through this, it kind of turns me off certain games, right? Like, I mean, you mentioned Pokemon Sword and Shield, right? There's a lot of hype about that game. And then when it came out, people were really disappointed by it. And it's one of those titles that I was like, well, all right. I mean, I didn't go out and buy it. Like, I listened to the hype, but I never got like overly excited about it, even though I love the Pokemon series. And then I was just like, you know what? When it came out, I was like, I'm good. I don't need to play it. And now I just recently played it not that long ago and I beat it, and it's a fun game. It's actually fun for what it is. But I went into it with the mindset of let me just enjoy a Pokemon game. I wasn't like listening to all the promises and what they mentioned were going to be in a part of this and like how they blew it out of proportion. And I didn't let my expectations get too high. I just went in to go play an enjoyable Pokemon game, and I actually had fun with it. So
You have a good point, because that's what I try to do with games now. I try to avoid the hype and stuff, because with Pokemon, I never got to play the Let's Go games, but I saw how they kind of changed things, and I was like, oh, they might do this with Sword. But I still went into like Sword into I was too excited for it. So of course I got let down. If I had not seen anything and just picked it up eventually, like you did, I probably would have enjoyed it more.
Yeah.
And
it's easy, but it's fun.
Yeah. And I hate to keep going back to Cyberpunk. For me, I avoided a lot of the hype. So, I mean, that's probably why I don't hate the game.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think for now, I try to avoid like all the preview trailers and all this kind of stuff for games, because I don't want to get hyped up and not actually see it in the game. You know, it's more fun to just explore it later on.
Yeah, I mean that's what gaming was when we grew up. You'd find a title on the shelf that you're like, I don't know what this is, but it looks cool, so let me try it out. And then it ends up being like a really fun game because you don't go into it with these crazy high expectations. And to say that getting overly excited about a game or content or anything like that is bad, that's wrong, right? Like it's good to have some sort of excitement for it, and you can show love for a franchise, but come at it with a clear mind of just don't raise your expectations too high, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's the end all.
Yeah,
you know?
And don't get so angry at these people. Like the developer for No Man's Sky actually got death threats sent to him. It's a video game, right?
Same with Cyberpunk. Like all of these companies that have like these failed beginnings, like they all get death threats. I'm just like, why?
Yeah, it's like, did this really ruin your life? No, it's a game. It's $60 at most that you've dropped. Oh well, deal with it. That's your problem for falling into the hype and not just looking at it as this is going to be a fun game or a fun experience. Like
both games actually offered full refunds like not long after they were released too.
Yeah,
so I mean,
so there you go.
It's really up to the people.
So why get like you can't get mad at these people for trying to promote their product. That's their job.
Exactly. They're just trying to make a living just like us.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
You know, it's shitty, but it's true.
Yeah. I mean, everyone does it. I mean, look at Apple, look at all that. Like, they create buzz. Like, that should be the term instead of like hype. Hype seems so like strong, like that, like, oh my gosh, like people can becoming fanatic about things. But like,
exactly.
Look at the buzz behind it, right? Like, that's more, I think, of a calm term or calmer term. You can still get excited, but just be happy that something's coming out.
Yeah.
To kill
I
people.
think that's where I'm at now, where I just get happy.
Yeah. Same.
the hype fandom, like fanatics, get kind of scary.
Yeah, it's
Like they get really. Ugh.
it's terrifying to hear what some of these people do. I'm like, no, it's not worth it.
Yeah, and it's always like that every year. There's always one big game that gets so overhyped that like if it doesn't live up to expectations, people like instantly freak out and like you said, do death threats and all that. Like it's dumb.
I wonder what would have happened if like that baby that was born, if they named their kid after like whatever the main character's name in Cyberpunk is. If that was the challenge, and that ends up being that. Like how mad?
Oh God!
Or somebody from like Fallout 76, right? Like since it is.
Dude, 76 sounded so great when they were first talking about it. You know, luckily I didn't buy into it, but oh man, I just remember like they were making such a big deal about it, and it looked cool. And in the first week, I just remember watching a few big streamers play it, and it looked so boring. Yeah. And I actually played a free trial of it for when they had their first big update, where they added that battle royale or whatever to it. And it's sad because the base of it was kind of enjoyable. Like if you have friends, it's enjoyable. It doesn't look good by yourself, but now that they added story stuff to it and people, it might be decent. But I feel like for me, that's a game that just it really, I'm done with it. You know, I don't want, like, Fallout 4 was okay. I enjoyed my time with it, but until I see what this next new Fallout, whenever it gets released, like I don't know, I feel like I'm done. I can play the originals and be happy.
I think that they just need to try something new. Just throw everyone for a loop, because the Fallout title is going to have that tarnish to it now. They need to figure out something different and just kind of branch out a little bit different. Like, don't remake Skyrim just with a different skin, right? Skyrim in space.
Well, Starfield sounds like it could be their next big IP. And I mean, I'm kind of excited for it because, I mean, that'll be if it ends up being like a big space travel like Skyrim, like that'd be really cool, you know? But who knows? Because they haven't said anything about it. We don't know. I mean, there's going to be a new Elder Scrolls soon too, but
I think that would be smart of them to hold it kind of close to the chest.
Yeah, they don't want to release too much because, I mean, you see what happens.
They've gone through it.
Oh yeah, them more than most others.
All their glitches and stuff. Well, that's going to do it for us this week. Thank you so much for listening to our little conversation on hype, the good and the bad. But before we sign off here, before we let you go, this is one of my favorite parts of the episode, and I just enjoy it too much because I love engagement with you guys. So, Chris, you know what time it is. Hit us with that question.
You could pick either one or you could do both, but what was a game you were super hyped for and let down? Or what were you hyped for and actually kind of blew your mind? Or decent enough, right? I'm curious because it's kind of interesting what some people like get excited for, like that aren't big name games, and it's really cool. You know, it's cool seeing that excitement for indie games and stuff like that. Before we go, there's also, if you're unaware, but on Instagram we're doing a little event called Joystick January where we have 31 questions for every day. And like best game, favorite game, biggest disappointment, like kind of general questions, but just post like your game title that, you know, resembles that question for you, and just tag it with Joystick January and tag us too. All the information's on our Instagram. We also have a Linktree link now that can link us to all of our stuff like Patreon, YouTube. Working on putting the other podcast links on there as well, depending where you listen to. But yeah, we're getting that all set up, and we also have links to the Discord on that as well.
Yeah. Cool. And I mean, I mentioned this earlier, but I'll just bring it up real quick again. I'm going off this is the month of challenges, right? So if you want, you can check out my channel or my page as well on Instagram. I'm doing a little drawing challenge, and it's going to be D&D inspired this time. So I'm picking different monsters from the monster manual and drawing a different one every day. And if you guys have an idea for future challenges that are more video game inspired, let us know. And chat us up in Discord, and we would be more than happy to hear what you got and maybe make something with you.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, once again, thank you guys for listening, and bye.
Bye.